Hello, this is Erica, and today I will be reading Puss in Boots. Once upon a time, there were three brothers named David, John, and Bruce, who were the sons of a poor miller. The miller did not have much to leave his sons, and when he passed away, all that was left to divide between them was the mill, a donkey, and a cat. The mill was left to the eldest son, David. The middle son, John, inherited the donkey, and Bruce, the youngest, ended up with the cat. "What good is a cat? I can't even afford to feed the poor animal," cried Bruce. Much to Bruce's surprise, the cat began to speak. "Dear sir, you have nothing to worry about. All I require is a sack and a pair of boots specially for me. Soon you will see. You have received the best inheritance of all. You're not as unlucky as you think you are," the cat assured him. Bruce wasn't quite sure what to make of this, but he thought that since it was odd enough that the cat could speak, perhaps the cat would also be true to his word. He quickly fashioned a pair of boots in the cat's size and found a sack. Seeing the cat jump to his feet, Bruce laughed and decided to call him Puss in Boots. Puss strutted away confidently into the woods. He had a plan. He gathered some carrots from a garden and put them in his sack. He then hid behind the trunk of a tree and waited for a rabbit to find his trap. Soon, Puss in Boots was rewarded for waiting. He leaped up from his hiding spot and closed the bag on his catch. Puss was very pleased with himself and moved on to the second step of his plan. His next stop was the castle, and so he ran excitedly out of the woods and over the bridge toward it. When he arrived at the castle, he asked to speak to the king and was soon taken to see him. The king's daughter, the princess, was sitting beside him. "Your Majesty, I have been sent by the Marquis of Carabas to deliver you this gift, a plump rabbit for you to eat," said Puss in Boots. "Please tell the Marquis that his gifts have been well received," said the surprised king. At these words, the cat bowed and left the castle. The next day, Puss in Boots returned with a tray of fresh fish. Then, on the following days, he returned with a partridge, a plump rabbit, or some other treat. Soon, the king and the princess announced that they would like to meet the mysterious Marquis. Hearing this news, Bruce was scared that the king would discover that he was not a Marquis and lived in a miserable cottage. But Puss in Boots had a plan. "I'll take care of everything. Take off your clothes and jump in the river," Puss in Boots cried. Moments after Bruce jumped in the river, the king's carriage appeared on the road. "Help us, your Majesty! My master, the Marquis of Carabas, needs your help. His clothing has been stolen by thieves!" cried Puss in Boots. The king made his carriage stop and made his coachman rescue the poor Marquis. "My friend, please accept our invitation to the castle to dry off. I will give you new clothing, and all of this will soon be nothing more than a bad memory," cried the king. "I accept with pleasure," cried Bruce as he was pulled from the water. At the castle, the cunning cat tried to save time. He confided to the king that his master had been very upset by this incident. "Will you please stay with him for a while, just until he comes to his senses? For my part, I will go ahead and make sure everything is in order when we receive you," said Puss in Boots daringly. The king agreed, which made his daughter very happy. She found that she quite liked the Marquis. Bruce was looking quite splendid, as the clothing the king had given him suited him to perfection. He had never been so well dressed. Bruce could barely contain his excitement. Meanwhile, Puss in Boots ran ahead, readying the third step of his clever plan. He threatened all of the country folk that he had meant horrible things and ordered them to say that this land belonged to none other than the Marquis of Carabas if they were asked. A little while later, the king, the princess, and the false marquis returned to the road. Along the way, the king began to question the farmers who were working in the fields. "Tell me, my brave fellows, to whom does this large and well-maintained land belong?" he called out. "Your Majesty, they are the lands of the Marquis of Carabas, our much-loved master," the farmers shouted in unison. A little farther down the road, Puss in Boots arrived before a castle that belonged to an ogre. He knocked on the door and heard a growl in response. "I am one of your greatest admirers. I've heard that you are capable of doing many wonderful things," the cat called out. Flattered by these words, the ogre opened the door and invited the cat inside. For the occasion, the ogre brought out a normal-sized tea set for the cat. "I know, for example, that you can change into very large animals," continued the cat. "Yes, that's right," the ogre grumbled. "That seems too far-fetched to be true," replied the cat. To prove that he could, in a flash, the ogre transformed into a huge, furious lion. "What a big, scary lion you can be, but I bet you can't turn anything as small as a mouse," said Puss. "Cheeky cat," thought the ogre. "I'll show him." In the blink of an eye, the ogre changed into a tiny field mouse. Before he had the chance to realize he had been tricked, Puss snatched the little mouse and gobbled him up. And that was the end of the ogre. Moments later, the royal carriage came to a stop outside the ogre's castle doors. Puss quickly ran all over the house, tidying up all the rooms before he went to open the door. "Welcome, your Majesty, to the grand castle of the Marquis of Carabas," greeted Puss as he bowed before the king. The ogre's kitchen was filled with all sorts of delicious foods. And so, the king, the princess, and Bruce sat down to eat a lavish feast. "My dear Marquis, you are such a fine man with plenty of land and a magnificent castle. Have you a wife?" asked the king. "Your Majesty, I have never found love until this day," said Bruce, smiling at the princess. With that, the king proposed that the Marquis of Carabas and the princess be wed. Both Bruce and the princess were thrilled. They had liked each other from the moment they had first met. It wasn't long before Bruce, or he was now known, the Marquis of Carabas, and the princess were happily married and living in the ogre's castle. "See, Bruce, I told you I was worth more than the mill or the donkey," said Puss one day. The end.